Well, joining us is Alpesh.B.Patel, CEO at Pryfinian Partners. Alpesh, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Alpesh.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So let's start with the Gulf news. Houthis saying they're ready for peace talks. How significant is this? Do you think that they're just buying a bit of breathing space, saying that they'll only talk if the airstrikes are halted? What do you make of it?
Yeah, I bet they're ready now that they've got Saudi bombers over their heads. I tell you what's good news about this story. There's a couple of things, despite it being a story about conflict. First of all, that the Saudis got involved. It's something which I've said before in this programme, that given that they're armed to the teeth by Western powers, the Saudis do need to be in charge of their region and cleaning up, particularly a country like Yemen, which is a base for Al-Qaeda, and we forget that they are a breeding ground for Al-Qaeda in Yemen. So that's one positive story. The other thing is that the Al-Houthis, who you mentioned, they're backed by the Iranians. Iranians, no friends of the West either.
Of course, the rebels deny that they're backed by the Iranians. This is the accusation that's been levelled against them.
I tend to watch Iranian TV for fun, and the rhetoric out of Iran that should the Saudis continue doing what they're doing, that the Iranians will more aggressively get involved, does not come from a party which is completely disinterested. And I think the Iranians are very much giving more than moral support, I suspect, to the Al-Houthis. But for us in the West, the two important aspects are that when the Saudis are bombing these individuals, they're harming Al-Qaeda, and secondly, that it's at least not Western soldiers having to get involved and lose their lives in defence of cleaning up what is now a failed state.
Although with Saudi Arabia, the ambassador to the US saying ground troops going in remains an option, that, I suppose, is what will worry some people, that this could escalate into a much bigger regional, an all-out war.
You're absolutely right. Saudi Arabia and, as I say, Iran are having a proxy war, and this is not exactly the most stable of regions. Having said that, there are pockets of immense stability, such as Qatar in the region, and you wouldn't want it to spill over. I don't think ground troops will actually end up escalating a spillover. I think, if anything else, it will bring it to an end sooner rather than later.
Let's look at the Financial Times now, and a subject that is similar to some degrees, looking at Pope Francis and his speech yesterday at the Easter Mass on Sunday. He was highlighting the plight of Christians in Kenya, in particular, the students killed at the Garissa University in Kenya. But he was talking about the effects of war on people in general, and I don't believe he was just talking about Christians either, but the persecution of individuals in countries like Syria, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, Sudan, Nigeria. A big subject and a timely speech for him.
How incredibly sad that at Easter he unfortunately had to talk about this in the wake of what happened in Kenya. He was actually talking about the persecution of people who believe in God and want peace and love and all those kinds of things, which makes them oh so threatening to others. And let's remember, these terrorists came from Somalia, another failed state, a de facto failed state, and I just wish we could go into so many of these countries, not lose any of our own lives and clean them up. Sadly, we can't. And let's not forget why these Islamic terrorists picked on that university in Kenya. It's because they're anti-education, just as this militant brand of Islam is anti-education in Afghanistan. They're anti-women, and there were women being educated, and of course they're anti-everything that they don't believe in. So they're anti-followers of the religion of Abraham, even though they follow the same faith and the same one God. There are very sick individuals, which as I say, I wish we could have the Saudis sending in ground troops in that region as well.
But just to bring it back, I mean, the Pope was positive, though, on some notes, saying that the talks going on, with regards to Iran and some other Western powers that was happening in Switzerland, that was very positive, and that could lead to future stability. So it wasn't all gloom and doom. It wasn't all negative.
I think the one great advantage that the Pope and people of faith who are peaceful have is that at least they have faith and prayer, and that will always give them hope. And I think that's what gives the Pope hope. Unfortunately, if you're looking at the political reality in the world today, there's sadly a lot not to be hopeful about. And it's unfortunate that it happens, in this case, in the name of religion. and what's just happened in Kenya, and it won't be the last time we hear about it, because African countries do not have the same defences that we have in the West.
Talking about stories that it's not the last time we hear about, let's move on to Greece and the tweet Reuters news agency has put out. The Greek Finance Minister Varoufakis saying that Greece plans to meet all its obligations. It's another deadline approaching, another payment due. How significant do you think this pledge is?
I think it's hugely significant. Hasn't he changed his tune, the Greek Finance Minister, the also coolly dressed Greek Finance Minister, the rock star? He has had a boot on his throat from Christian Lagarde of the IMF, and he's realised that actually if I say I'm going to pay it all back and I'm going to be a good boy, maybe they will start giving me a bit more money, which is actually what the Greeks need.
That's exactly what they need, and very soon.
It's exactly what they need, and actually it's not a bad thing. There's no point trying to humiliate the Greeks, and the Greeks are playing the game, and they're trying to extract the most they can from the lenders, and rightly they should as well, and I hope for their sakes as well as for the rest of Europe that they do come to an agreement, and it looks like they're now in the mood for it, as opposed to the conflict we saw between the Greeks and the Germans. I think there's been an attitudinal change, probably on both sides, having looked at each other in the eyeball to eyeball, and they've both decided, you know, let's come to some kind of agreement. I think it's very good for Europe, and European stocks are at an all-time high.
Well, talking of which, let's talk about stocks and the Daily Telegraph business section. Stock market turmoil likely in months after the election. Often there's a lot of movement prior and after, to be fair.
Yeah.
Give us your take, because, of course, this is an election for a very long time that's very difficult to predict the outcome.
For those who follow British politics, this is the closest since February of 1974. The two leading parties are pretty much head-to-head. They are identical in the polls as things stand. Now, you would expect, therefore, if there's a coalition government after the election, that the markets would naturally have some turmoil. And what this newspaper article has shown is actually afterwards, you do get volatility, but with the exception of 2001, it's pretty much been to the upside. So perhaps you should buy after the results. The one sector I wouldn't consider buying after the results are banks, because I think whichever party comes into power and has the majority, they're going to go after the banks and try and get some money out of them. So I think it's a good idea to buy British stocks. They're at an all-time high under the Conservative Party, the Conservative-led coalition, I should say, and I think it's a good time to buy more of those and buy British companies.
Now, we're swiftly running out of time. Bunny or family silver being sold in Europe at museums? What do you want to talk about?
The museums. The funnier story.
OK, go on then.
Pragmatism needs must.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got some amazing museums, particularly, I mean, if you live in a city like London, amazing museums. I recommend everybody today, it's a bank holiday in Britain, go out, go to the museums. They're free, they're open, and they're going to sell you some of their art as well to make ends meet. Just grab anything that takes your fancy and walk out with it.
You might even get a free egg today as well.
Be careful. That's it for the moment. Alpesh.B.Patel, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for joining us. That's it for now.
Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.